Welcome to Accounting High.
And so I was doing that at the salary of a staff accountant. And they're like, yeah, we'll promote you to senior accountant after this project's over and blah, blah, blah. And so then the time comes for promotion. I'm like, I'd love my promotion now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this would be great. Oh, we didn't budget for that. So, and I was like, oh, great. Okay, well, I'm just going to go find another job. So that's what I did. I moved up in my career by finding other jobs because, that's kind of what you have to do in corporate these days.
That's what you do in our generation. That's what our generation does. We don't last 2 years in things without getting bored or needing something else or wanting more, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
at least if you're ambitious.
If you're ambitious, and we will get to that. That's a foreshadowing. It's a big one.
May I have your attention, please?
Welcome to Accounting High. It's freshman year at a brand new school. Here, we have no rules in place as we're on a mission to set our own traditions. So hang tight and learn with us as we grow. At Accounting High, you can expect to gain knowledge in a completely different way than what you may be used to, with some fun and oftentimes colorful conversations. Whether you loved high school or you hated it, here's your chance to be a part of an unforgettable experience redone. While you're here, don't forget to follow us on Spotify or subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you may be listening to us right now so you don't miss out on any new episodes. And feel free to leave us a 5-star review letting us know how the school year is treating you. In addition, share this episode on social media, tagging us at Accounting High. So sit back, relax, and open your mind because class is in session.
I repeat, may I have your attention, please?
This is another public service announcement brought to you in part
by Accounting High.
The views and events expressed here are
of the next generation of accounting and tech professionals leading this space.
The events and suggestions are not to be taken lightly. Children should not partake in the listening
of this podcast.
Anything else?
Yeah.
So without further ado, introducing the star of our show,
Scott Serena and Serena Shoup.
Hello.
Class is in session with the quadruple S's here. We got a lot of S's in the room. This is a bridge episode from Serena's podcast too. So we're kind of bridging the two together, as you'll see in the name of the episode. This is Crossing the Burnout Bridge today.
Yeah, I guess so. I feel like I'm almost on the other side of it.
Ooh, so you're at the edge of the other side of the crossing of this bridge. So I'm very pleased, very blessed to have Serena Shoup on today. Of a couple things. She's got, of course she has, bookkeeping, obviously, and the ambitious bookkeeper. She's got a podcast, she's got a platform, and she's got 2 businesses that she's running, and she's a rock star, literally. Just recorded a hook for one of my raps. She's a rock star. I called her Stevie Nicks before this episode. I got to watch my language too, because Ian's going to edit that out anyway. We share the same editor for our podcast right now. Her brother. I don't know what her rap name is, but I think I'm calling her Lil Sis and Lil Goldie. I like Lil Goldie because it's like Goldilocks. Works on a lot of levels. So, Serena, introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Serena Shoup. I have I would call it like a part-time firm. I mean, we serve clients, but I've always been part-time in it. I've never worked full-time. So we can get into that too, on my my issues with feeling like I was worthy of feeling burned out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I run a virtual, I call it a bookkeeping firm, but to be honest, we do more than bookkeeping. We don't do tax, but I do sales tax. I do consulting and advisory type stuff. All those things. And then I also have the Ambitious Bookkeeper, where I coach, mentor, and inspire other bookkeepers and accountants to starting their own business. That's kind of where I help people, and escaping corporate.
Yeah.
All that.
Well, inspiration usually comes with a lot of authenticity and vulnerability. And I get that when I listen to your podcast. I love that people say, I think you get to know somebody and you form a relationship with them, especially, if they have a platform like you do, and that's forms tighter bonds. And people think, people feel like that's why you're an inspiration, because they see themselves in a lot of the things that you say, I'm sure. And they can relate to it. But tell me how you got started into doing all this stuff, because very accounting focused, very accounting friendly, accounting-esque. You're a bookkeeper. I mean, I say accounting and bookkeeping. I usually use them interchangeably. I know technically they're not, but you can talk about that too. But I think, overall, you didn't set out to be an accountant or a bookkeeper, did you?
I did not. So the story starts in college.
Can it start in high school, please?
Actually,
Since it's accounting high?
Yeah, it can start in high school. To be honest, it was before high school that I actually got my start with accounting type stuff. I just didn't realize it for a very long time. My dad owned an HVAC company, small business in a small town. Just a small town.
What small town? Yeah, what small town is this?
Yeah. So, what small town was this? Is that what you said?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Silver City, New Mexico.
Silver City. Ooh, I like Silver City. I just like the name.
Yeah. So, my dad owned an HVAC company, and I used to run my bicycle to his shop and balance the checkbook.
Dope.
Categorize expenses on a paper ledger. Yeah. So that's probably where I got my start, but I didn't really come back to that until college.
And how did you end up doing that? You got any brothers or sisters? How did you end up being the one to ride the bike there?
I'm a daddy's girl.
Okay.
And I liked hanging out at the shop. And I used to go with him on jobs and, hand him tools and stuff. I was probably more of the tomboy. And yeah, I just like to hang out there. And so he was like, I'm going to put you to work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did. Hung out with my dad a lot and helped him in his shop and his business. And yeah, so I do have an older sister. At that time, I had an older sister. My little brother that was not born yet. He's from my mom's second marriage.
Okay.
So yeah. Yeah.
So you got a kind of a thing for the numbers, but then you ended up going to college. You didn't really pursue the numbers thing. That was just sort of like a way to be around dad and kind of make some money on the side too,
Yeah, I got $5 an hour, I think, for doing that.
Yeah, well, my daughter
which is
gets
pretty good when you're 12.
Yeah, well, she's been getting $5 allowance for a week. I don't even know what I give it to her for. She just gets $5. Now I just upped it to $50. That was a pretty big raise that she just got. But I guess going on 16, kids need more money these days. Inflation killed me. Yeah, so many ways. But yeah, so you're making a little bit of money on the side. Now we enter college. This is the origin story.
Yeah, the origin story. In between there, my senior year of high school, I got pregnant. Small town.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so
were you in love?
I was in love, yeah. Yeah. So nobody knew at graduation, it was still pretty early. So I graduated in New Mexico. They have a lottery scholarship. So the actual the lottery that people buy tickets for to hopefully win someday. They also create college scholarships with that. And so if you go directly into a New Mexico university from a New Mexico high school, you can get your tuition paid for. So that is how I ended up going to college for free.
So you won the lottery. Is it a lottery to pick the people who actually get the scholarships? Or just
no,
apply?
You just have to have graduated with 2.5 or ish GPA, not crazy. You just have to have decent grades. And then you have to stay in college. That's the catch, is you can't drop below your full, your full hour minimum, whatever, 12 hours or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And yeah, and then I had other grants and scholarships to pay for books and things like that. So I went to college because I knew that I needed to give my daughter a different life.
Yeah.
Right. And I originally was not planning on going to college until I found out I was pregnant. And I was like, I guess I better.
Well, that's usually the opposite, though. That's interesting because most people end up forfeiting their plans for college and education because of an unplanned pregnancy. You did the opposite. That's That's pretty interesting. So how did you manage that? Like in your head, who was going to watch her? Who was going to be there while you were at school, or were you going to try to balance both?
Yeah. So since we stayed in my hometown, we had support from family. So his family and my family were there. But mainly my first semester back. So I went my first semester of college, I was very pregnant.
Yeah.
I had her over Christmas break. And then my second semester of college, I did all online classes because they were starting to kind of incorporate that just to keep my minimum of 12 hours. And then I went back after summer. I started going back just a couple days a week and was able to get her into like the daycare on the university campus or child development center. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so she was on the same campus as me. I could go hang out with her for lunch.
Did not know schools had that. That's actually like ideal situation. You got Blackboard probably. I mean, it's 16 years ago.
Yeah, whatever. It was Blackboard.
Yeah. And but then they also had like ways to care for children. That's so dope.
Yeah, that college, that university actually has an education, like it started out as an education college, so like for teachers. And so they have a huge like early childhood development program. And so the students will work in the daycare and the preschool there and get hands-on training and what. So that's actually what I went to school, what I started out going to school for is elementary education.
Yeah. And what happened there?
So a couple years in, so I think I had pretty much finished my basics. I was starting the like official education program, doing my observations and like going into classrooms and doing the actual lesson plans and things like that you have to do. It's actually really intense and a lot of work, a lot more hours than just like you're in your classes for 12 to 18 hours a week, but you also have additional time you have to spend at a school, shadowing teachers, and it was a lot. And during that same time is when I split up with my daughter's father, and I needed a job. So went out and found a job at a little local grocery store. It's actually a food co-op, so like a cooperative. They run with like a board of directors. It's all volunteer, but the employees get paid. So I got my start in the back office of that grocery store, doing accounts payable, doing the cash deposits, basically any of the paperwork involved with running a store. And the finance manager kind of mentored me and showed me all the things. We used Peachtree back then. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I would say it was probably like one semester in I was working like 30 hours a week. I was doing all the observations for my education classes and all of that. And it was quite a lot to manage. I did not see my daughter very much at all. And I kind of hit like a breaking point. But at the same time, I realized like this money management thing and like the numbers, it's actually, it comes natural to me. It's kind of easy. And then I started kind of like remembering like, oh, like we used Peachtree with my dad's business and stuff like that, like later on. And so those kinds of things were familiar to me. And I was like, what if I just take an accounting class? So I talked to my finance manager. I was like, I think I'm going to take an accounting class just to like see. And if it works out, like maybe I'll just change my major. And she was like, that's great. That's a great idea. Yeah. She was like my mentor. She didn't even have an accounting degree. So that's another thing that like I have a special place in my heart for people who are self-taught bookkeepers because my very first most amazing mentor was self-taught. And so I know that like it's possible. Just a little side note there. And so I did that. I actually ended up taking two accounting classes, like the first two, like accounting 1 and 2, like one of them's principles of accounting and the other one's cost accounting. Took them both at the same time. And after that, I was like, this is cake. I'm just going to change my major. Yeah. And I was able to graduate on time and all that by doing that.
Like the contrast, you needed to provide, single mom. And the other, I mean, obviously everybody knows becoming a teacher or anything adjacent to that is for passion, and purpose, but it's really just for the people that don't really need to make that much money. I mean, everybody complains the teacher's salary. That's what everybody talks about, the teacher's salary and everything. But that seemed like a lot of work and efforts that you didn't have. So this stuff, it's almost like you backed into it and serendipitously worked out for you. That's dope. So taking the accounting classes, you decided to change your major right then. Did you see a path in the future? Like, were you going to work for this grocery store forever? What were you going to do?
So at that point, right around the time I changed my major, the finance manager had basically taught me the full accounting cycle. And so I was doing the month-end journal entries. I was preparing the financial statements. She even had me present them to the board. I was like 20 years old, you guys.
Yeah.
It's very scary. But I'm over here like 20 years old presenting financial, maybe I was 21 at that point, presenting financial statements to a board of directors who is a volunteer. These people are, most of them do not have a finance background. So the questions you're getting are much like we get from our clients these days. But I was presenting financial statements and she kind of like had me do that maybe one month or quarter. And then I came into the store one morning and there was an envelope, like one of those manila envelopes, the yellow ones with the,
Class.
full of, it was like kind of bulky. I was like, what is this? Had my name on it. It was the store checkbook, the store keys, and her credit cards. She had been like, she just basically resigned and she had a letter in there for me, like, it's all yours, basically. Like, the job is yours. So I became the finance manager from going to be just like an office assistant, basically, or accounting assistant is probably more like the tasks I was doing, to becoming the finance manager of, we were doing like $4 million a year in gross revenue. A pretty small store, and we had like 30 employees.
Yeah.
So the board obviously like freaked out over that. And they were like, well, we need to make sure that you know what you're doing. So they brought in a CPA to shadow me for an entire month end. And even though like we did annual audits. So my work had already been going through audits. We had an outside firm audit us. But they wanted to make sure, like for sure, that I knew what I was doing. And he shadowed me and he was like, yeah, you know what you're doing. If you need anything, I'm next door, because the CPA firm was like right next door to the store.
Yeah.
And I did that for a couple years until I graduated. And then after that, I was like, I think I'm going to go work for a CPA firm and start getting some hours.
So at that point, you decided you're going to become a CPA.
I didn't know for sure if I wanted to become a CPA, but I wanted to see if that was something I wanted. And I would only know that by working with a CPA.
Yeah.
At the same time, I was graduating. I didn't want to stay in that town. And so I was like, I'm going to move to a city.
Yeah.
I'm going to go work at a CPA firm. But my goal was never to work for a Big Four. So I did not work for a Big Four. I knew that was not going to be the life for me because I was a single mom. I knew already that there was not enough work-life balance for that. So I moved to Tucson, Arizona, which is like 3 hours away. So it's like a small city. And moved in with a friend of mine for a little bit, went on a job hunt and had like a stepping stone job just to like get money in the door, which was not using my degree. It was like medical billing.
Yeah. What were you going to do for childcare at
one.
that point?
At that point, I was paying for it.
Okay.
I was putting her in, she was like 4 years old. So I was putting her in an all day, I think it was like a Presbyterian preschool.
Yeah. Did you also put all your in the manila envelope for somebody before you left?
No, no, I did not. They knew what my plan was. So like a year before I graduated, I was very like open and honest. Like, I'm not going to stay in this town. I'm planning on moving. So I helped them hire my replacement. I've actually done that in all of my jobs pretty much, where I had like a high up role, because mainly for my team,
integrity.
Not necessarily for the company, but like for the other people I work for or with. I think it makes a big difference. So yeah, I helped them hire my replacement. I trained them for several months. And then I was like, all right, my job here is done.
Sorry to off-rail you there. So yeah,
That's all right.
Childcare, we got that worked out. We got all that settled. Tied up loose ends at the grocery store.
Yeah.
And now you're off to the big city.
Yep, off to the big city. Got a little job for a while. And then I found my CPA firm job on Craigslist.
Oh, wow.
It was a very small firm, like a solo practitioner whose wife was the office manager. And then he had like a senior accountant helping with taxes. And so it was like it's like a tax practice basically, but we had some monthly accounting clients. So they hired me as a full charge bookkeeper. So that was my first position inside of a CPA firm. Quickly promoted to staff accountant. And then I was there for about a year. And that's when I started studying for my CPA exam.
Yeah, the firm that I own now, I found on Craigslist.
That's so funny.
Yeah, I know. It's very super small. But yeah, Craigslist is great. Shout out to Craigslist. I should actually put a job ad up there. We need to hire somebody. I might as well just start using that again. I'm sure people still do that, right? Craigslist
Probably.
or Indeed? I don't know. I don't hear Craigslist as much as Indeed and LinkedIn and everything. So getting your CPA, did you have to get more credit hours? How did you manage that?
So when I started studying for my exam, I was living in Arizona and they had the 150 credit hour requirement. But my plan was to study for the exam, sit for it, and then fulfill the rest of the requirements because you can do it kind of out of order because I already had my degree at that point. So you just have to have like the right amount of accounting classes to be able to sit for the exam. And then once you're licensed, you still have time to fulfill the rest of the requirements or once you've passed the exams, rather. So that was my plan, to just take the exams first and then take classes after. But in the midst of that, I ended up moving to California, and their requirements at the time were a little bit different. So they had two avenues. So you could either do the 150 credit hour requirement, or you could work 2 years under a CPA instead of just one. So I had already had like a year and a half under the CPA in Tucson. And then the job that I was working at in California, I worked in a corporate accounting department in a business, in a company, a public company. And my manager was a CPA, was licensed. So I got hours under her.
That's so much more practical. I don't know why more states don't do that.
They got rid of that. It's no longer an option. Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy because it seems so much more like the experience that you're going to gain
Way more
working
valuable.
under a CPA is entirely different than just taking, credit hours from music classes, which basically that's what you could do.
Which that's what I was going to do. I was like, I took like an Excel class and then I was taking like art classes.
Yeah.
I was like, why?
That's crazy.
I already have my accounting requirements.
What brought you to California?
I met somebody. Well, I didn't meet somebody. I ended up going there for a relationship.
Sure. All right. That's usually the reason. There's always like, we've talked about this on the podcast too. Like there's always like 3 reasons why people usually move, and it's either work or relationship. I don't even know the third one. So, or family maybe, but
yeah. Running from your problems.
Yeah. Running towards something or running away from something. Right.
Yeah.
Like
generally.
That's always the case. So California.
Yeah. So I was there so that's where I ended up getting my initial licensing. There's so many things that like people probably don't realize until you have to go through it. But like I had passed my first exam in Arizona, but since it's a uniform exam, I was able to just transfer the score over to California and finish the process there. And now I'm back in Arizona, and now I'm licensed in Arizona as well as California. So
do you have to do anything to maintain both of those licenses?
They're both the same amount of credit hours of CPE. So you just have to basically pay the application fee in both places and show your CPE hours. And
then practically speaking, why do you keep both licenses?
I may drop the California one at some point, but the reason I still have it is because there was like a transitional period where I was waiting to get my Arizona one approved. And so I had to renew the California one anyway. And whether you renew as active or inactive, it's the same price.
Oh, wow.
And so I was already fulfilling the CPE credit hours for Arizona in order to be active there. And so I was like, I mean, it's the same price. I may as well just renew it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's not cheap. California's not cheap for anything.
No, it's like $250 or something a year. It's probably more now.
It's not the $800 that a business has to do just to stay active in California. But
yeah.
So back to Arizona. At this point, where are you at? Where are you working?
When I was in California?
I guess, are you still in California in the story here?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
In the story, I am, I guess.
Okay.
Not anymore,
I know you're not right now. Yeah.
Yeah, in the story, I was in California, worked. So once I moved to California, I actually...
This is a true story. This is not fiction.
Yes.
Yeah.
True story. Once I moved to California, I actually stopped working in CPA firms and I went into industry. So my first job in California was for a dental manufacturing company that was a subsidiary of Henry Schein, which is a really big medical supply company. And so I got public company experience doing all the SOX stuff and all that fun jazz. and
Isn't
then
that fun?
No, it's very
okay.
boring.
Yeah.
But the bright side of that is the work was so repetitive, boring, and easy for me that I studied for the rest of my exam most of the time at work. Well, not most of the time, but a good portion of it I did at work.
We won't tell Henry.
That's okay. I'm not there anymore, so it doesn't matter.
I don't think Henry's there either.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
All right.
So yeah, I passed my exams at that job and I had taken on extra work and was like filling in for another controller of a different like subsidiary of Henry Schein. So they would buy up all these little companies and then kind of turn them around and get them public, ready for public reporting and all that kind of stuff. Once you acquire them, they're kind of on your 3-day close schedule. So we would have to like basically overhaul their accounting department. And so I was doing that at the salary of a staff accountant. And they're like, yeah, we'll promote you to senior accountant after this project's over and blah, blah, blah. And so then the time comes for promotion. I'm like, I'd love my promotion now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this would be great. Oh, we didn't budget for that. So, and I was like, oh, great. Okay, well, I'm just going to go find another job. So that's what I did. I moved up in my career by finding other jobs because, that's kind of what you have to do in corporate these days.
That's what you do in our generation. That's what our generation does. We don't last 2 years in things without getting bored or needing something else or wanting more, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
at least if you're ambitious.
If you're ambitious, and we will get to that. That's a foreshadowing. It's a big one you dropped right there. So your ambition, you're in San Diego at this point, or where were you?
Yep. Yeah, I was in San Diego.
Okay. It's a great place. I think I'm going to end my life there. I might have talked about that on your episode, but we'll keep going. So you end up hopping jobs. What's the next one that you started working for?
The next one was a biotech startup.
But
they were already they already had revenue coming in. So they were early stage, maybe not early stage startup. So they were like mature startup.
Sure.
Maybe. They were making a lot of money and spending a lot of money.
Right. They were not toddler startup. They were teenager startup, maybe.
Yeah, teenager startup. I was like employee number, I don't know, maybe 50 or something like that. Okay. But our headquarters were in San Diego. So just like finance, marketing, and the owners of the company were in San Diego, the rest of the company was in Michigan. That's where our lab was.
How much of a pay bump was it? Like, what were you getting paid in the first one, and what are you getting paid at this one?
The staff accountant role at the first one was $40,000 a year, and this one started out $60,000.
Okay, it's respectable.
Yeah. And so
$20K bump.
Yeah,
always worth moving.
Come to find out later on, they would have paid me a lot more. But I worked with recruiters that were like trying to keep everybody happy, and they're like, she was really cheap at her last job. So,
oh, geez,
yeah, it's very interesting, that whole world. So, yeah, so I started there as a senior accountant. At that time, the accounting department was me, a financial analyst, and the VP of finance.
Okay.
Yeah. So I helped build the accounting department. I hired like an intern / AP specialist, and that was my very first hire. And then they hired a controller over me.
Oh.
And he worked out for a couple years. I'll get to that in a minute. And yeah, so like we kind of built the accounting department together. And I'm trying to think of when it was probably like six months in, I got promoted to accounting manager. And so then I was still the one building the accounting department, basically.
Yeah.
And built it up to like 10 people, basically. So a whole accounts payable department. Because the company, when I started, was like $60 million in revenue. Mm-hmm. When I left, they had 400 employees, and I'm not sure what their revenue was at that point. I can't remember. They ended up going public later on.
Yeah.
So I got promoted to accounting manager, and then
Was it fun
for anyone,
with that fast-paced type
it was
startup?
for me. It was fun, but it was also a lot of hours. So it was like, that's probably why I'm such a good entrepreneur, because I'm able to just like do all the things.
Sure.
And that's how that was. And it was really fun. So at the beginning, I was doing everything in the accounting department, doing the accounts payable, the month-end close, payroll, everything. We used ADP, but
What other systems were you using? What other tech?
we used Microsoft Dynamics.
Okay.
So big ERP system. That was our accounting system.
All right. Yeah.
And then I implemented like a purchase order approval software to sit on top of that, integrate, implemented like inventory controls and all that kind of stuff. So I got a lot of experience there, which has enabled me to serve my clients really, really well.
Yeah. Yeah. Because everything else just seems easy after that.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. So I had good flexibility, but I wouldn't say I had good work-life balance there. Like, I had the flexibility to come after I dropped my daughter off at school and leave in time to pick her up, but then I was logging in at home to finish things, right? Sure. So I had the flexibility, which was very important for me. And then I also had the career growth. So that was amazing. So a couple years in, after that controller was hired, I was like, I'm really tired of doing his job for him and him getting all the credit. So I was ready to leave. So I went and found another job, got a job offer, negotiated some stock options and things at this other job. And then I went to the CFO of the company I worked at and was like, and HR. And I was like, hey guys, I'm going to leave. This is my job offer. And they're like, what is it going to take to keep you? I feel like you asked me this question before. Someone recently was like, have you ever heard of someone getting like a counteroffer when they try to leave a job? And I was like, yeah, actually it happened to me.
Yeah, I might have asked that. Yeah.
Yeah. So they were like, well, what's it going to take to keep you? Because like the team loved me. Like they were very loyal to me, and they probably would have lost most of the accounting department if I left.
Yeah. And
they knew that. So, because I would just take people with me, I'd be like, because if I'm going to be in another accounting department that I have to build up, I will be poaching people that worked for me. That's how that works. So they countered and they were like, what's it going to take? And I was like, well, I want to be controller. I'm not going to work for Jeremy anymore. Like, if I stay, he has to go. And so that's what they did. They fired him because they knew he was not really doing his job anyways, and I was doing all the work. So
I could sense and smell the resentment when you brought up they hired a controller. Was it at Jeremy's just the worst thing, or was it just the fact that they hired somebody over top of you when they probably should have just had you doing it in the first place?
That, the second thing. Yeah, it was. And that's something I've always kind of battled with throughout my career, is I've always been like the youngest person in the department,
sure,
or like the youngest person doing the thing. And so there's this automatic like, well, you don't have the experience type of thing.
Sure.
Even though I was fully capable of learning while I went, which is what I ended up doing anyway in that role. And that's really hard to prove until after the fact for a lot of people. So,
sure.
You know what I mean? It was one of those things where they were like, well, you don't really have the experience that we're looking for. And I've been in that role too, or that position too, where it's like, I don't want to have to train people on certain things or mentor them on certain things. Or I used to have that mindset anyways. Now I'm like, I would rather just mentor you the way I want things done.
Mm-hmm. That's a hard thing to learn too. Trust me, I'm still trying to learn that. So that's, but it takes the experience. It takes learning as you go, as you said, it takes learning as you go to figure out what you're capable of too.
Yeah. So. And putting yourself in those like situations that are probably going to be uncomfortable without, like I didn't really have the confidence at the time that they hired the controller to raise my hand and be like, actually, I want that job, because I was so new in my senior accountant role. And
did you even know what the controller was going to do differently anyway? Like, you probably needed them to define that for you just so you could do it.
Yeah, exactly. And it was a startup environment. So they were kind of just like, we just need this position that's like going to be able to report directly to the CFO and talk to the CEO and blah, 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 blah. So it was like, yeah.
Well, and I'm sure Jeremy made you look good when you eventually stepped in those shoes, right? You probably did enhanced what he was doing in some certain ways. I'm not making assumptions here, but I am.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when we brought him on, like I was the one that kind of taught him the ropes of the company because no one else had time to. So
Sure.
I was like, this is what we're doing. This is how we do it. And he came from like a finance background, not an accounting background. And so there was a lot of things that he just wasn't strong in. And he was just trying to build his resume because he didn't have that background.
Yeah.
But yeah. So.
But that's an important distinction too, the difference between accounting and finance. So in your roles leading up to this, well, a controller is it because you already had a finance manager at the startup, right?
There was a VP of finance, but really it was like finance and accounting. Like he started out as kind of like the controller, like he was the main person doing all the accounting. And then as the company grew, he was helping them raise money, doing all those like CFO type things and like budgets and forecasts and all that. So it was a very hybrid, like our department was very like hybrid finance and accounting. And that's how the public company was too. So I had already had exposure to building budgets and things like that in the previous role. So if I had known I don't know what they were really looking for in that controller position other than like just kind of like building the team because they are supposed to.
Yeah.
Because eventually they want to go public.
Yeah.
So
taking all those steps. So, but that's again, you just building up, climbing the startup ladder. And you were controller for a while. Keep going. We're getting closer. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was controller. I don't know how long I was controller, I guess, before I got pregnant with my middle daughter. And so I knew that I wasn't going to come back after maternity leave. And so when I was helping them hire like an interim controller, I basically like made sure it was someone that could just stay after I left.
So that's a big decision, though. You went your whole life, your whole working life with a child. And then your second child is the one that you decide, I'm not coming back after maternity.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot like to unpack there. But
Sure.
The main thing was that like, I know what it's like to be away from my child while I work and go to school and the effects of that, and that I did not want to have to do that again. So, yeah.
I could relate to that so many ways because my oldest grew up without me present. I was there, but I wasn't present. I wasn't emotionally there. I didn't see her grow up. I mean, I saw her literally, but not really, not like I did with the other two. And that's a hard thing to deal with at this age, Still, to me, it's like I feel like I missed out on some, but also I was growing up just as much as she was, And I think that's got to be the case with you, where you gotta get to the point where you prioritize life over money, in some ways too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So was this the same relationship that you followed to California?
No.
No. Okay. All right. This is the love story.
This is a soap opera story.
I love it. Yeah.
We don't need to get into that.
That's the drama. I love the drama, though. I mean, I'm trying to bridge both of those two on this bridge episode. So, but this is you're in California still, pregnant, gonna go maternity. Did you decide to go to Arizona at that point, or what was the?
No. So that relationship I'm still in. So with my middle daughter, her father, and then we had another child after that. So he was able to support us enough to where I didn't have to go back to work. So there was that plus, And so we stayed in San Diego for a few more years. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what year we're even in.
Nobody's going to fact check this, yeah.
I'm I don't even know what year it is anymore. But we were there basically until the beginning of 2020. Okay. But we had started looking in Arizona for land and places because we knew that when the biotech went public, we'd have a mini retirement. So that was always like part of the plan to retire elsewhere and make the money stretch further.
Sure.
And so we bought some land and we bought a house that we were coming out here to like vacation in around the same time that I started my business. And I started just kind of freelancing on Upwork to stay fresh.
Yeah, fresh. I like that.
Yeah.
So keep yourself busy a little bit, but you've, now established in your life that you want to spend time raising your kids too. Got a house in the country. Is it the country? The country?
It was. So even in San Diego, we had a house in the country. We were literally in the San Diego country estate.
Cool.
So it was about an hour outside, 45 minutes outside of San Diego proper, but it was like part of a smaller community.
Still had the weather
So
though.
like, we still did not really have that much weather.
Oh, really?
It was a little warmer inland, but not much. Not much weather. Yeah. So I started, I think it was around the time I actually got pregnant with my son. So my youngest, who is now 5, is when I started freelancing on Upwork to just like, it was like I was coming up on my renewal period for my CPA license. And I was like, do I want to like renew this? I worked so hard for it. And so I was like, I may as well like start taking some CPE classes, and I discovered CPA Academy. And then I started, through those CPE classes, you get exposed to the new technology that's out there. And I was like, this is pretty cool.
Sure.
Maybe I can use this.
Because a lot of it's sponsored too, right? The
Yeah.
CPA Academy stuff is sponsored by all the apps. So that's how,
Yeah. And those apps aren't in big corporate public companies. Like most of them aren't. Expensify was, but like everyone else, like
It wasn't public
most
at the
public
time.
companies don't utilize technology the same way that our small business clients do these days.
Sure. Well, it's because their systems are so archaic sometimes if they've been around. I mean, so our clients are more agile and we're more agile too, smaller. And but this is an interesting time too, because that's like right around the 2020s, right before COVID when you moved, or was this like the COVID move?
Yeah. So I started my business in like 2017.
Okay.
I mean, I say I started my business in 2017. That's when I started like freelancing. And undercharging and doing things that a controller does for a very small business for like $30 an hour.
Which to you is just side money anyway. So it wasn't like you were trying to...
That's really what it was. Because, I mean, more to unpack here. Like I had major money mindset issues at that point and like really hated asking for money. And it was very new to be in a relationship where someone was providing for me and I wasn't the one providing anymore. And for it to not be my money. So I was like, well, I'll just do this to make some money so I can buy some new leggings.
No, I love this money mindset issues. This is the bridge that I'm still crossing, is the money mindset stuff. So this is cool.
It's constant work, honestly. Yeah. Like I have to revisit that a lot. So yeah, that's kind of...
Have you read that?
The Psychology of Money? I have not. It's on my list though.
Check that one out too. We'll do a book report on that for our listeners.
All right.
We're going to get there. But
another good one is Happy Pocket Full of Money.
Oh, Happy Pocket Full of Money. I like that.
Especially if you are curious about like quantum physics and things like that.
Well, we're not going to get quantum physics in that. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. So
anyways, so I started freelancing in 2017, had my son, and kind of took a break from that for a little bit because I was not prepared for having 2 toddlers and the challenges with that.
Sure.
And I think I ended up maybe keeping 1 client on at that time. And then when he was about a year old, then I went back into it, but full force for most people. But for me, it was like, I'm making this an actual business, not freelancing.
Were you calling
on
the
side.
business a toddler when you said 2 toddlers?
No, my 2 literal toddlers at home. Okay. Yeah. Because they're very close in age. Kira, my middle daughter, was barely a year old when I got pregnant again. Mm-hmm. So they're like 20 months apart.
Sort of following your parents' footsteps in a way, too.
Mm-hmm.
Except you and your sister were closer in age, and it's your brother that was trailing further from a different.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
yeah, I mean those age gaps, you forget a lot of things about about kids growing up that you have to remember again, even in like a couple year age gap.
Mm-hmm.
You forget about diapers. The minute they get out of diapers, you forget about those completely.
Yeah.
So
you also forget about labor.
well, that I never remembered.
That's biological, though. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that at that point I was like, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm actually going to make it a business and stop screwing around with like undercharging and freelancing. And so I really started like going into it intentionally with building a process, having like a good tech stack. And then I started like sharing that information with other people. And when I saw the same questions come up that I encountered initially, and that's how Ambitious Bookkeeper was born.
Yeah. So this is your ambition catching up to you too. I mean, you were always full-time busy. And you're talking about work-life balance where there was just everything was blended together. You're raising a child by yourself, working full-time at a startup nonetheless, doing everything, wearing a bunch of hats. The whole dream or idea that you're going to set everything aside and go on maternity and not work when you still kind of have a side hustle is kind of a pipe dream for somebody like you. I think like you're not going to be able to sit still.
It was a challenge. Yeah, it was a challenge for a while. And because it wasn't until, about a year in to being full-time stay-at-home, like trying to go to all the mommy groups, trying to fit in with that crowd, which has always been a challenge for me. But at least this time it felt a little more natural because this time I was actually the right age group for it. When my first child was born, I was not ever involved in any of that. I was always the youngest. I felt like I didn't belong with other moms. And it's just this whole thing about it. So I was like, I'm going to quote unquote do it right this time. I'm going to join the mommy groups. I'm going to I did find a really good core group of mom friends through like a hiking group. And so we would hike every day with our babies strapped to us.
That's dope. Yeah. You got to find some shared interests. Was it like a meetup group?
Yeah, it's called Hike It Baby.
Okay.
So they have meetups all over the US and chapters of it. And so I was pretty involved in San Diego's a very active chapter and there's so much hiking there that I was able to finally explore this city that I hadn't explored at all because I had been working so much. So I used, I was like, I had never done like the cool hikes. Like I think I had done Torrey Pines before that at that point, but like none of the other really cool ones. There's some really awesome hikes there and a lot of easy ones, a lot of hard ones. But so I was able to really explore the city with my baby strapped to me.
Cool.
And that helped for sure with like postpartum depression and, that whole thing.
Yeah, you need
getting out in nature is a good thing.
You need community. You need people that you can talk to about what you're thinking. Just because getting stuck inside your own head is never good for anybody, especially with stuff like that. So that's cool. So, I guess we're kind of bridging this whole part of starting your ambitions catching up to you, and this becomes a full-time thing now, right?
Yeah. So part of what I think. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say of course, bookkeeping, that was the side thing that turned into the full-time thing. And then the ambitious bookkeeper was the side thing to the full-time thing?
I would say they were both side things. They were both side pieces.
The full-time thing was the mom, right?
Yeah, the full-time thing was the mom. I've always kind of felt like my business has been like a side hustle to motherhood type of situation. And I've always tried to run it that way as well, but like as a business, if that makes sense, like the hours of a side hustle, but the impact and whatnot of an actual business. So part of what drove me to actually go full force and create a business out of it is once my son was born, I really struggled to leave the house. It was very, very difficult to leave the house by myself with 2 toddlers.
Sure.
And so I was home more than when I was with my second baby technically, like, because I would go out and hike every day with her, but it was just one baby I was toting around. It was a totally different story with 2 babies. And I did try it for a while when he was small, but he's a chunker. Like, he grew really fast. There was a time where I could wear both babies, like one on my back, one on the front.
Oof.
But he gained weight fast, very quickly. And so it, like, physically wasn't manageable. And then, like, I just had like a lot of anxiety about leaving the house alone with both of them.
Yeah.
Because it was just so much effort. And so I was kind of like trapped at home, essentially, because of my anxiety. Probably should have gotten like actual help. But instead, I started a business because I was like, well, I'm here. I may as well do something because I can't leave.
And this was, you're still, what year is this?
That was 2018.
18, okay.
Yeah.
Agoraphobia? Is that what that is?
Is it? Is there
I
a
don't
name
know.
for it? Yeah, I probably should have actually gotten real help for it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's probably a little bit more serious. I just know that because it's an Incubus song too. It's like agoraphobia.
Okay.
So yeah, still in San Diego. And
Yeah, I was still in San Diego. And because of where we lived, like, it wasn't, I think what added to it, like, we were in a great little community. Like, I could walk to the park with the kids, but that's about as much as I could handle, because if I had to go to the grocery store, it was packing the kids in the car and driving 20 minutes.
Mhm.
And my kids did not like the car. So I was like, I'm just not going to do it.
So then you didn't like the car anymore either. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's a lot of what contributed to me, like, having more time and focus for the business, because I was like, I'm like almost literally trapped at home in my mind. And so I would get kind of bored and needed to do something with my brain because, one of them's an infant. They're not very entertaining.
No.
And the other one was a pretty good little toddler and very easygoing. And so she kind of played independently and played with her little infant brother. And
I'm a pretty good little toddler too. Some might say. You just said that, you walked right into that one.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So the being able to do both things at once. You're at home pretty much by yourself with 2 kids and 2 side hustles. So those are 2 kids as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and your other child, that's 3. So that's 5 kids, basically, if we're using the businesses as metaphorical kids, which they are, because then all your employees at the businesses. Did you have employees at this point?
At the very beginning, I did not, but at about 5 clients, I hired a part-time contract bookkeeper who, fun fact, is still with me.
Oh, dope.
Like, she's a long-term, and she's still a contractor, but like, we just have a great working relationship, and I don't know where I would be without her. But yeah, when I got to about 5 clients, I was like, okay, so I had hired a babysitter at that point to kind of give myself a break for a couple days a week, and I would focus on the business during that time, or go get my nails done, but usually just focus on the business.
Mm-hmm.
And it came to the point where I was like, okay, I either need to hire the babysitter for more hours or hire in my business. And I decided that I wanted to hire in my business because I was not willing to sacrifice more time with the kids.
What was your
and
release? What was your release? Was it being with the kids? Was it working, or was it getting your nails done?
My emotional release,
yeah, like
it would probably be working.
Working, yeah. Because for some people, that's where they're in their element, and that's where they get their stress relief, is actually working. Like it causes too much anxiety to be around the kids because you're thinking about other stuff, or you wanting to do something else. And even like something like getting your nails done, you're thinking about what else you could be doing and more things that you're pushing forward. But when you're working, all of a sudden it's like, I'm just speaking in my own behalf. Like, I don't get my nails done, but it's the same types of things. When I'm working, I feel like I'm moving something forward, and I feel like I'm doing something. And that's when I feel my stress relief almost.
Yeah.
And that's what leads to the burnout in the first
things.
place, when you start resenting that.
That, or like, I think I've always used work as an escape from something. Like, I fell into that in college, where like I was going through a messy breakup, divorce, all the things with a child. And I poured myself, like, I would go to work even when I wasn't scheduled to work. I would just show up there because I was like, I don't know what else to do.
Right. That's your escape from reality.
Yeah. So that has been my pattern. And that's the thing that also will lead to my burnout, because I won't really resent the work, but I know that I'm not dealing with something else. And so that's just continuing to build up.
That's how I am with email.
So it's a slippery slope for me, the
sure.
working situation.
For
so
sure, yeah.
I've always wanted to kind of keep that under check by
in this stage, you're
not
designing
working
it.
so much.
Like, so you're in control of the work situation, full control over it. Nobody's telling you what you need to do. I mean, clients in a way, but you're setting that up. Like, you're setting the stage for all of this stuff. And it early days for most people, you could be setting it up the wrong way, which leads to the burnout, right? Like, so at what point, so let's keep going to get to the point where it started to at least feel like everything was caving in, right?
I would say I added the piece of like helping other people through the ambitious bookkeeper probably kind of early on in my business. Like, and I struggled with this, like the whole imposter syndrome. Like, I've only been like a real business for like a year, but I'm telling other people how to set up their businesses too, and how to set it up so like there's systems in place from the beginning and stuff. But I felt kind of qualified to do that because it was still so fresh in my mind. And that was my excuse.
Sure.
But that was like my creative outlet, but also productive, if that makes sense. So that was like okay, well, I'm not actually working on bookkeeping. So, and I'm able to do like a little more creative things like blog posts and social media.
Well, was this also a way, so it's a creative outlet that you can pursue, but was it also a way to prove yourself that you being the youngest person in most of these rooms and everybody saying, you know, like this was what you ran into at the other job where they needed to hire somebody else because they didn't think you were capable of it. Is this to you to prove to yourself you're young at doing this, but you're still capable of teaching other people? And they can't tell you you're too young to do this. You haven't been doing it long enough. They just don't have to sign up, or they don't have to go to your classes. Like, you know, you have the imposter syndrome, but also I feel like in a way you got something to prove to yourself that, you know how to do this, so you can teach, you know, and what better way to learn than to teach? That's what they always say too.
It's very true. Like, you will become a master at your craft if you also have to teach it, because you have to look at things differently, like how other people are going to learn it. And there's always been that like desire to teach. So this was another outlet for that.
From your origin that you didn't pursue. So this is interesting because I could relate to that in some ways with the creative aspect of it. I never wanted to teach. I always wanted the creative side. So through all of this whole vein, you never really talked about wanting to be like a musician or wanting to, like, you were in California and all of that other stuff, like the creative pursuits. Was that always still buried inside of you, or were you doing something?
So I started playing music when I was pretty young. Like, I was in church choir and all that stuff as a child. And then I was in band in like middle school and high school. And then in high school, I actually, if I could dig up the CD, we can play a song at the end of it.
Dope. Yeah.
But we recorded a single and had it like played on the radio. I had a little a garage band, like a literal garage band.
Please find that. We'll play it at the end of the episode. Yeah.
But I played the drums in that because my dad's a drummer. So we had a drum set. But I play multiple instruments to circle back. And I always have, like, I started out playing the trumpet, then I taught myself guitar in middle school. And so I've always kind of tinkered with guitar and singing. And then
which is also an instrument, your voice.
Yeah. And I taught myself the drums, or my dad taught me a little bit, and then I kind of just figured things out. And
like you did with bookkeeping.
Yeah.
All of it. Just figure it out. Life.
Just figure it out.
Figure it out, Mom. Figure it out.
Yeah. So the music thing has always been a part of me. And that's something like before I got to the point at the end of high school where I was just like, F college, I'm not going to college. Before that point, I wanted to be a music teacher.
Okay. Music teacher.
Yeah. And I thought I was going to go to college for music, and then things changed later on in high school, and I just
nobody
didn't have
says they want to be a
interest in high
music
school
teacher.
or in
It's always the
teaching.
failed musicians that end up becoming teachers. You actually set out to be a music teacher?
I had that because like I had such an amazing music instructor in high school. Like It was pretty incredible. Like our high school is pretty small. We had like 100 kids in each class, right?
Yeah.
But we had a huge band because the instructor was amazing. Like we had 100 kids in band, which is
That's
like
crazy.
unheard of for even bigger schools. And so like marching band, we would like fill up the whole field and we like would win competitions and things like that.
More people were there for
So-
the band than for the football team. Yeah.
So, yeah, that is why I wanted to pursue teaching in music, because I didn't think that people made any money performing. So I was
Okay.
like, well, at least I can make a teacher's salary being a teacher. And our music instructor, our band instructor, was actually like one of the highest paid teachers in the district because he was tenured. He also did extracurricular things. So you get stipends for that and all that. So I was like, but like now that I look back, I'm like, it's because he put a ton of hours in.
Yeah. It's the hours, right?
But yeah.
So you're putting all your hours into the accounting, and
Yeah.
now you've got you see how I'm pivoting again. So now you've got
Okay.
the creative pursuit that you're doing, the ambitious bookkeeper. You have employees yet on either of these?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. On both sides. Yeah.
On both sides. Yeah. And when did you decide that I guess you still considered them side things even at that point?
I consider them, they're definitely at what point? Now, yes, they
yeah.
are businesses, but at that point, they were still definitely just side hustles to motherhood. And I've actually never worked full time in my firm.
Which you established earlier, the part-time aspect of the
Yeah.
firm has always been part-time, but that serves you well. And I think that a lot of people want to get to that point and they go backwards where it's always a full-time. And now people want to get out of the work and out of
Yeah.
that's what I wanted. And now my firm is a part-time thing for me. I consider it a part-time. I work maybe 4 hours a week. Backed into that by accident. Listen to your episode for that kind of stint there, but I never sought out for that to be a part-time thing. I still can't consider it a part-time thing because my mindset around work is still doing something that I don't want to do. That's what I consider work, is being forced to do something that I don't feel like doing. And if I'm doing something I love, I don't consider it work. That's burnout too. Like understanding that and knowing that you're doing something that you don't want to do is what causes that burnout in certain ways. But you're doing things that you want to do in both respects, right? Like these are things you started out, and obviously they're choices. So
Yeah. So I've always done minimal hours in the firm, like under 20, like sometimes more like 10 per week. And then in Ambitious Bookkeeper, there's ebbs and flows. There's times where I will work a 30-hour week because of whatever we have going on, or I just am really enjoying creating stuff. And so that doesn't feel like work again.
right.
But my family feels like I'm working.
Well, that's another good
So,
point, right?
yeah.
And so did you ever get burnout around that, around the family side?
Yeah, there's been times, and I still kind of struggle with it. Like even yesterday, after a full day of meetings, even though like I work part-time, but occasionally like one day a week, there might be a day where I work the full day. And like yesterday was one of them, like a stacked full calendar of meetings, which has its benefits
Sure.
and its drawbacks, but at least it's all out of the way in one day. At the end of the day, I'm like, I literally cannot even make any other decisions. Like whatever is at home is what people are eating. Like I can't even, it's not happening.
So you used the phrase throw in the towel, and you were referring to a lot of the work type stuff. This was on your episode. You can't throw in the towel as a mom, as a family. I mean, some people do. You hear those stories, but you really can't. Like you have no choice in that matter.
So you have to then be like, okay, what else can I sacrifice?
Yeah. And in certain ways, these have always been side things, but you wouldn't want to sacrifice those because they're things that you want to do and you set out to do. So how do you decide what to throw the towel in on?
Really little things that all add up.
It's all the
And
little
that's kind
things.
of,
of
Yeah.
being a business owner that I think some certain business owners will do all those little things because they feel like they can't give it up. And it's all those things that build up too. And
Yeah.
it's hard to delegate, so for some people. And is that what you're also teaching in the Ambitious Bookkeeper?
I've started to teach some of that stuff to, like the more tenured participants of the program, but my main program really teaches like setting up a business intentionally, like getting clear on like, if you do just want this to be a part-time thing, let's set it up that way. Because I've done that. I know it's possible.
Yeah. Sure.
But there's a lot of mindset stuff around like, it still kind of comes back to the money thing, like thinking that you can't have both, like your family and a successful business, and then really getting clear on like the things that matter. So like I said, like the little things, sometimes it's a little thing like delegating the actual bank feeds. Like if you're the firm owner, you should not be, even if you are a solo firm owner, like you can hire somebody to do that piece of it. Social media, things like that, whatever you don't really enjoy, just hire it out. But if you've waited too long to hire things out, then it becomes difficult to share the revenue and the profit
Yes.
from your work, which is, I think, the benefit that I've had this whole entire time. I've never taken more than 50% of the revenue to myself. So I set it up that way from the beginning because I hired someone, and I just like knew always like I'm never going to take the full profit to myself because I don't want to work full time. So it's not all my pay.
Right. Well, that's
So.
actually interesting. I never even considered it like that because I've always been an all or none type. Right now I'm considering, and I think I'm in the process of giving my management team equity or them buying into some equity. But I think in the back of my mind before this stage, I was always just, I want all of it or none of it. Forget it. Like I don't want to have to share anything. I'll just sell the whole thing off and then I'll go do something else. And that's a scarcity mindset in some ways, but it's also like I don't know. I got to get over it. I don't know what the label is for that type of mindset, but I've been getting over that. And you went into it.
But you are sharing in it because you're paying people to work there.
Sure.
Too.
Sure.
So, I mean, like when I say things like that, I'm more like directing it toward like the solo firm owner.
For sure.
They're used to taking all of the profits to themselves. And if you've been the only
that's how
person
they value
working
their time
in the firm,
too.
Yeah.
Their time is worth a lot more. And then it's like they don't have the time to train somebody or they don't want to pay to train somebody. It always comes down to that getting over that mindset of paying your first person, your first employee.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where a lot of the solo people, we see that in our business owner clients too, where the ones that we don't have as clients anymore and we don't even attract that type of clientele are the ones that can't even pay for anything because it's too expensive, right? Like they don't want to hire an assistant or even an admin person. They can't afford to pay us now because our prices are too high for them and they can't part with that money. So it's their mindset around money too.
Yeah. It's and time, like
time and money.
I think if you value your time more, it's easier to give away some of the money, quote unquote, like give it away. I mean, they're working for it or they should be. But like that's where I'm at. I'm like, I value having the time more than having all of the profits. I also know that like my time is more valuable. I should not be doing those tasks. So if I were to do a profitability analysis on a client that I did most of the work on, we're losing money.
Right.
But if my team does most of the work and I just hopped in to review or to meet with the client, we are way more profitable. And so that's something that I work through with people too, to show them like the numbers of like, you are literally losing money if you're the one working on this client.
You're losing freedom too. So time
and
you
time,
can equate
yeah.
time to freedom too.
Yeah.
And those should be more valuable than money. But with some people, they chain themselves to it, then they resent it, and they don't even realize that they're valuing money over time and freedom. That's a very important distinction, is the time and the freedom and valuing that over money. And some people never will. They'll always value money over it because they think the money's going to buy them freedom later when they're done with all of this. What are they working toward? Where are they going that's going to eventually turn into this magical thing? And for some people, they dig themselves into a place where they can't even sell their business and they can't even transfer it into the freedom because they're chained to it forever.
Yeah. I was
So
going to say something else. That popped up and-
well, we were in this whole story. I think we're basically sort of at the present, right? Where are you in it? Are we at the present yet? Are we?
Yeah, I think
getting there?
we're in the
Okay.
present pretty much.
We're in the present. I'm present here in this conversation.
Yeah.
So yes, we're present. It's a gift, right? The present is a gift, is what I always say.
Yep.
So presently, you've expressed this. You were ready to throw in the towel, and this was only like a month ago, a couple weeks ago. I don't know when.
Yeah.
And you say you're getting close to be at the other side of it, because I've expressed that I feel like I'm on the other side of it. That bridge is elusive. It could be an island that I walked over to, and then there's 5 other bridges that I'm about to cross. You know, sometimes when I'm in the middle of it, I think I'm at peace. And then all of a sudden I realize that there's other things creeping up from behind that I didn't even see coming. Right. So when you say you're ready to throw in the towel, what was it that triggered that? Or what was it that got you to the point where it's like, is this even worth it?
I think a lot of it was just what was going on in my personal life. And I felt like, I mean, I have a teenager who is, I mean, a lot of it too is like she wants to graduate early. So I'm like, oh my God, I only have 1 more year with her when I thought I had 2. Like things like that
daughter?
kind of.
Like you wanted to do things early too. It sounds like you were.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say she has the same level of drive. She just really doesn't like high school.
Okay.
Initially, it started out as a conversation of she wanted to drop out, and I was like, hell no.
We should
Find
introduce
another
her to
way.
Accounting High. Maybe she can transition to Accounting High. She can help me out.
So then she found another solution. And a high school here has a program where you can take extra classes online and graduate a whole year early. So that's what she's been working on. And so like there was like other personal things going on. And I just kind of felt like I couldn't give the personal things enough attention because I was distracting myself with work, but also like work needed me.
Of course.
I rolled my eyes for anyone who can't see. Like work really probably didn't need me, but I was telling myself that story because I didn't want to have to like deal with life. And so I kind of got to the point where I was like, well, maybe I should just blow it all up and not deal with any of it. Like some very dark thoughts were crossing my mind. I'm past that point. I'm past that point. I have more positivity and optimistic outlook on things. And a lot of it has come down to like sacrificing the little things that didn't really matter that I was spending time on. And like the social media was one huge one because I actually enjoy that. And so it was really hard for me to let that go. Like I love interacting and engaging with people online. I love doing the creative posts. I love doing silly reels. It gave me that creative outlook. And so I used that kind of as an excuse, but I was spending way too much time on it. Yes, it can be beneficial, but I also had to like reevaluate my goals of like, what am I trying to do here? Which business is actually going to be the one that can last decades? And if we're honest, it's the bookkeeping firm. So I kind of had like that going on in my head of like, I can't just sell ambitious bookkeeper. I mean, maybe I can. Maybe that's a me problem, but it's a personal brand. So it's a lot more difficult. I've built my firm in a way that is less personal brand and more company culture type of thing that I know could sell. It's just
That's
not
really
at that point where I want to.
So when you say you could eventually do Ambitious Bookkeeper, the title of it at least isn't as personal as you get into the inside. It is all Serena. And in my case, everything I didn't want to be about me. And now I'm actually getting backwards about it, and it's now my face is on the cover of this, and I wanted it just to be this brand that didn't have me I'm involved, but it wasn't about me, so I could eventually just get out of it if I wanted to, right? So the Sons of CPAs was supposed to be multiple, like just people that were sons of CPAs, and then it was like, well, it could be sons of daughters, and then it's like, maybe let's just make it a high school, bridge the metaphor for the next generation, right? So there's always going to be a next generation of something. And at some point, I'm not the next generation. And so I want to be able to pass it on to the next generation. It's like it's more of like a changing of the guards that I built in from the beginning. I think in your case, the Ambitious Bookkeeper is referring to you. You're the ambitious bookkeeper, but it's also the audience is the ambitious
The
bookkeeper.
audience,
So it's
yeah.
all of them collectively. You could pivot out of it and have somebody else be that center. It's just changing the cover of everything, right?
That's true. Yeah.
Um,
It is possible, but I definitely think that, that's just something that I had been like grappling with of like the amount of time I spend on Ambitious Bookkeeper is much more than I spend on my firm. But the value, the resale value, basically, like the company valuation of a firm is going to have a higher valuation because it's not a personal brand. And so like that's just been an ongoing
And you built
thing.
that to not rely on you. You built the firm
Yeah.
to not rely on you as the sole, driver of everything.
Yeah. I mean,
So-
it still does. Like I do all the sales and I still do work with some clients, but it's only because I want to. Like,
Right. Yeah,
have
you
to.
do
I
what
could
you want
hire
to do.
someone
Pick
for
and
sale.
choose, design around what your wants are, right? And to fulfill all the needs, and you get a lot more self-actualization and fulfillment from the ambitious bookkeeper because you're also helping people, and in so many ways, both of them you're helping people, but
Yeah.
you can see the direct impact because you're helping people that are doing things that you're doing as well, and it's like a one-to-one. But this is classes though, right? Like give us the lay of the land. Of course, the bookkeeping is for course creators. I love the branding on there too. It's dope. So this for
I did a
course
rebrand.
creators.
It wasn't always that way. So
Okay.
I started out as Serena Shoup CPA. And I started
How
getting
original.
lots of requests for just tax returns. And I was like, this is not what I do. It's not what I want to do. I hate taxes. I need to rebrand. So that's when I had already had a decent client base of other course creators that I had connected with through creating the Ambitious Bookkeeper brand because I was in their world. I was interacting with them in other programs, sharing knowledge that I could help with. And so I kind of accidentally ended up in that niche. And so that's when I was like, well, most of our clients are course creators or online business of some sort, e-commerce, coaches, consultants. And those are the clients we love working with. They're the ones that are open to using Xero,
Sure.
all these other things. And so I was like, well, we need a rebrand. So it's not my name. And I've had other people give me their own feedback on this that they disagree, but and sometimes I go back and forth with it too, but I call it a bookkeeping because most of the time an early entrepreneur in our client base, they're making enough money for a bookkeeper. They don't realize that they probably need other things. So they're looking for a bookkeeper.
Sure.
And so we get them through that. We're like, oh, a bookkeeper. And then we're like, but look what else we can do.
Yeah, I like that.
I've had other people tell me that that's the wrong way to do it, but I disagree because it's been successful so far. So, and sometimes my pride, my ego is like, should I be called a bookkeeping firm because I am a CPA? Should I be an accounting firm because we
Well, that
do
was my
sales
next
tax
question.
and other stuff? Like, I don't know yet.
Sometimes it's a little like, so bookkeepers, I said this on Twitter yesterday, bookkeepers and EA don't get respect, like, especially in the CPA world, because EAs, for example, it's like I have a whole episode coming out on that. But then there's also like bookkeepers are always looked down on. And I think that in a way, bookkeeping and accounting, to me, they've always been synonymous. And I've used accounting because it sounds better. But a lot of people don't even know what accounting is. When you say that, it could mean many different things. You just want to differentiate yourself so people don't think you're doing taxes. And any type of back office accounting, bookkeeping is the entry point to that. So I think you're positioning yourself into the lowest entry point and the easiest way possible to get with the client. I think the argument that others might be making toward this is you want the higher value clients and the bigger clients, then you need to lead with something bigger like advisory or advising. And then we can do all the other little stuff, but they're not going to ever look for you for advisory or advising. They just want more from their current person. And that's why that people are being led to the advisory watering hole is you can offer your bookkeeping clients more when you start offering advisory, but to get the clients and to get them to come in the door for my firm, it's usually tax. Usually they find us through other means, and then they want somebody to also do tax. So that's our lowest entry point because it's a need that everybody has. Every business owner has to do taxes. Every business owner does have to do bookkeeping, but a lot of times they got their mom or their mother-in-law or their brother, their sister, somebody doing the bookkeeping, somebody that's self-taught, right? Which you were self-taught. And they do a good enough job where we can kind of guide them through it and have them keep doing it. And then we do the taxes at the end of the year. And at some point they grow out of it or they finally need us for the bookkeeping. In your case, you're taking people at the point of, if you're going to do anything else for them, the bookkeeping has to be done right. Yep. And that's your entry point. So I would disagree. I think we can get into a whole other ego conversation and pride conversation too, because those are fun ones. But in this case, I would argue that everybody's right. You know, whatever people are telling you you're wrong and whatever you think you're right on, I think it's always just personal preference. Everybody's different too. So
yeah,
that was my interjection of the day.
I like that. Yeah, and I don't. The other thing too is like I want to change the way clients view accountants, because I get a lot of clients that come to me that they're like, I asked my parents' CPA this question and they acted like I was an idiot and I never want to go back in there again.
Gotta hear that.
And I'm able to answer a lot of those questions as long as it's not like too tax strategy-ish. But I still understand the basics of tax. I understand business formation. I understand a lot that I can help my clients through without making them feel like. And so they value that. And we do charge more for bookkeeping than most other firms because we have a team supporting you. Like we have a bookkeeper, an accounting manager, and me, the CFO/controller. So it's like, there's a whole team supporting you. It's not, I can get into the whole thing.
Team-based book. Well, no, but then why is it that so many accountants are like that? Is that another ego and pride thing? Or is it just that a lot of accountants are, or they're just not socially palpable? They're not good socially with people, and they don't come across well. Because if not, I see this all the time. And usually it's nice people. Usually it's decent people when you get to know them, but they just come across as like not approachable and like.
Yeah. I think part of it is they get so immersed in, like, you get so immersed in your accounting education and your background and the crowd. If you hang out with other accountants, like you all have the same lingo, but business owners don't use the same lingo as us. So, and then there's the soft skills component too. Like you said, like some people are just not approachable. And a couple of weeks ago or a month ago or whatever, I was preparing for a talk that I did at a retreat for course creators and online business owners. And my talk was about small business finance, obviously. And I was talking to my dad about it. I was like, I'm doing this talk. I'm kind of nervous, but whatever. Like, I know it'll be fine. And then later on in the conversation with my dad, I said something and I had like bad grammar. And he was like, hold up, like you've said this thing wrong like twice now, and you're about to get up in front of business owners and talk. And I was like, yeah, I want them to be relatable. Like I want them to feel like they can relate to me. If I get up there and talk in all this accounting jargon, they're not going to want to work with me. Like, know your audience, Dad.
That's dope. And but that's also takes a lot of self-confidence and to be able to even stand up to your parents. I think I always fell into the trap of, I thought something, I felt strongly about it, and then my parents would question it, and then all of a sudden I questioned it too. It wasn't until recently that I started to question their motives and their criticism. And God, I had to block my mom on Twitter because of the that she was saying behind the scenes. So it was just more one of those, like, you had to grow up pretty quickly. You had a kid early. And so you gained that whole self-confidence at a younger age, and always saw older people as like not getting in the way, but as you knew just as much as them. And they weren't like, in some ways that could hurt you in the growth phases. But if you had that balance of understanding and learning from them as much as you can, but still that confidence to say, no, I'm right on this, which is what you just said with the whole, some people tell you how you should sell your services. Mm-hmm. You were, no, I know how I'm doing and it's working for me. I always had that fear. Like, it wasn't until recently that I realized that some of the things I was doing is right. And so I have a lot to learn from your mindset, your attitude. And sometimes that could be an Achilles heel or it could be a downside, but it's also
My attitude. Yeah, some people don't like my attitude.
Some people don't like it, but you're just like, it. I don't care. Like, I'm just going to keep, I'm being me.
I also have a very people-pleasy side. And this new, I have an attitude with people I am very comfortable with. Like, I have no problem standing my ground, but I do definitely
Because they're not going to leave you or abandon you.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. So, but it is something that I, when you talk about confidence around other people, I'm an old soul. I've always felt more comfortable around the older crowd. In high school, as a freshman, I was hanging out with seniors. And my daughter's father is 5 years older than me. My current partner is 12 years older than me. I've always been around the older crowd. And so I feel like it's weird. I've always been the youngest, but I feel like I fit in better with those people. Maybe they're not as judgy, but when it comes to other, not so much now, but when I was younger, other girls my age, I was very insecure.
So if I could translate in a way, they don't expect as much from you, so you can impress them because you're the youngest. And all of a sudden, you're saying things that people their age don't even say. And so all of a sudden, the bar is a little bit lower for you because you're a younger female that all knows her and is pretty mature and intelligent, however you want to call it. Then all of a sudden, that builds up your confidence even more because they're really impressed by the stuff that they may not be impressed with if it's somebody their age. Right?
That's true.
So
that probably plays into the type of clients I like to work with too. I like to have that education component where if a client comes to me and they're they already know everything, I'm I don't really like to work with clients like that. I like to educate my business owners and my clients and help truly help them learn stuff and be better business owners.
They show their appreciation.
They definitely do. And I don't really have that whole positioning conversation. If you want to attract people that are looking for CFO services, well, generally those are multi-million-dollar companies, and I don't want to work with those CEOs.
Right.
I have a sweet spot of $500K to $2 million. Those are the entrepreneurs I like because they're still open to learning things at that point and doing things differently.
I like that range too. It's such a good range of clients. When I think of our clients, that's usually our entry point is 700 or 800. That's right when they're about to hit $1 million, and that seems to be the right thing. But we've always been going for the bigger, and it never really is the greatest client relationship when they're bigger because their heads are bigger too, and they know everything. Yeah. Dope. Yeah. So continue. I don't know how many times I've interrupted you.
I don't know where we were at, and how much time we have. We've been going for an hour and a half.
Yeah, I know. We go on, but this is so we've already gotten to the present. What does the future hold? I want to at least touch on that because you say you're close to the edge of this burnout bridge. You're not throwing in the towel now. You gave up on certain things. The social media thing, I did want to comment on that too because social media tends to be you can see some benefits of it.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is very self-serving and it feeds our egos. And it's the dopamine hit that we kind of it's been engineered that way. And I see it every time I'm going on there, whether it's on Twitter, before Twitter, I was on, I've never really been a social media person, but that's always been the fear for me is it's a time suck and my time is too valuable for that. Yet I can't fight. I have to fight it when it's on my phone or when it's there for me to see. And I go in there and it's feeding me all the things that I want. Like yesterday was my birthday and I got a bunch of birthday wishes on Twitter, and I'm not used to that. That was cool. I usually just get them via text, but then it's now here's for the world to see. People love me, people like me, and it's feeding my ego. And it's I don't know how healthy that is, but we're all doing it. Everybody's on Instagram. I'm not even on Instagram. Everybody's on all these things. And so does that make it I don't even know what question I'm posing here, but what's your take on it? Is it self-serving? Is it serving your ego? And is that why you're trying to get away from it? Or is it just the time?
Both. I think like you said, there's definitely a benefit to it. There's a benefit to having a presence, but you don't have to get so sucked into it. However, like sometimes I'm like, well, my social media wouldn't have the benefits if I didn't get it to that point. It's kind of like that mindset around like, well, like my business is where it is because I hustled. Like it's kind of that same mentality. Like it's hard to let go of like, is that really what got it to that point? Or am I just telling myself that story because like I just spend a lot of time on it. And so I need it to feel like it served a purpose. There's a time and a place. Like I definitely, and then there's that whole like values conversation of like, if I'm trying to pull back from social media, but our team is still posting on it, distracting other people from doing their work. Like, I don't know how I feel about that. That's the whole thing because I want people to have boundaries, but like, I think everybody needs to like establish that for themselves and probably go through what I did, like take a month off. And then you realize you really don't need it. You can schedule things out with schedulers without actually being on there. And you can answer messages through like, what is it called? Meta Business Manager now. Like, so I can answer DMs without actually being on Instagram. Unless they're voice notes, then I have to go on Instagram, unfortunately. But there's tools out there now that can help you with those guardrails. And yeah, so kind of like you said, ask yourself the question, is this, it was definitely serving my ego, especially during a launch when I'm on there a lot, like doing a live and doing like stories with my face on the camera and like DMing people. And I was like, I'm so popular.
Makes you feel like you're back in school again.
Yeah.
So that's a good way of, I mean, I guess like separating yourself from it, you understand what's real and what's not. Because when you're in the middle of it, you can't tell what's real and what kind of connections are real, or is it just your own illusion or the narrative that you're trying to tell yourself. I think all of it's valuable. All of it does have value, and it can't be ignored because it's so powerful, all of the social platforms. But it's something that we have to like at least continue to learn what's our relationship with it, because their relationship with us is we are the product. I think we all know this, or we all should know this, is we're the product of all of these social media. They're all companies. They're all private companies that are living off of our attention, and our attention is their fuel. And where do we give our attention? Where do we pay our attention to? You know, like I think we all crave and want more attention, and they live off of that attention that we're seeking too, because that's what we're getting when we're on there. We're getting attention from others. We're getting likes. We're getting DMs. We're getting messages. We're getting followers. We're getting all of these things. We think we're gaining something out of it, but what are we really gaining?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just like postulating now. I don't even have a point to all that. I think it's just like posing the question of somebody's gaining our attention, and that's their dollar signs. That's their money, is our attention. And our getting attention from that is not dollar signs. It's time. And we're giving our time and freedom. We're not getting that much money out of it. Not too many people are making that much money off social media. There are people that are naturally like that's a healthy relationship for them, because people are making millions of dollars off of these platforms for sure, especially like YouTube and some of those others. But it's that time and freedom versus money. And if we're chained to going on Instagram, then Twitter, then LinkedIn, then YouTube, then TikTok, and then back to Instagram, and then a little bit of Snapchat and other things in between, those are hours and hours. You know this, like that's what it takes from us. That's the time and freedom that we fight for in our business, and we fight for in other aspects of our life. We want to be present with our kids. We want to be there. We want to be everywhere. We can't be everywhere at once if we have our phone in our hands.
Yeah. So that was one of the big things that I did, is I took a complete hiatus, like deleted all of those apps from my phone and logged out of Facebook and everything from my computer as well, like a complete hiatus. And we set up an autoresponder in Facebook and Instagram Messenger that, like, if someone DM'd us, like, thanks for reaching out, we're taking a hiatus. If you need to reach us, email the support inbox. because my team is monitoring that. But yeah, so that was a big one, and it helped me recreate. I don't know if there was ever actually any boundaries, but the boundaries I wish I had
Right.
initially
Well,
around socials.
Not recreating, you're creating them
Yeah.
in the first place. And your whole story, never once did you mention social media until we started talking in the end here about burnout. That's the only time it got brought up. It wasn't an integral part of any of your businesses. It's not the center of any of them. It's a lead flow. It's lead gen. It's like, it's another way. But even you told me yesterday in a conversation, if anything, email is one of the most important funnels to have. And it's not all the social stuff. The social stuff is important, but it's not the be all end all of growing an audience. It's just an augmentation of it, or it's adding to it. It's adding a little bit more layers to your interaction with your audience. And that could be spiced around all of these platforms and doing it outside of them too, using that. What was the manager that you were talking about? The social
Meta
media?
Business Manager. So
is that the one you use for everything?
No, that's what I use to answer DMs if I'm not like it without being in the actual social apps. But we use a scheduler called Loomly that posts to LinkedIn, Facebook. You can post to Twitter from it, Instagram, YouTube, like literally all of the
Is it spelled
platforms.
Loom?
You can
Loomly?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah, and you can actually manage your comments and DMs through there as well for all these platforms once they're linked. But yeah, that's what we schedule everything out through.
For any of our listeners that are using social media, get off of it personally if you're not gaining anything from it and start using one of these managers, because that's what I need to do. I'm going to take that note right there. And I've been meaning to do that for a while, but I just don't know which one to use. There's like Hype Fury. I see that a lot. There was another one. I forget all of them now, but
yeah, this one's super affordable. I want to say it's like $20 a month or something. And we have multiple users. So my team can create the posts and I can just approve them and publish and schedule them out. So it's got a good workflow system in there. You can have comments between you and your team if they need to like edit something before you schedule it out. Like you can do all that within that platform. It's great. So that was the big thing that I, kind of stepped away from, and I've trained someone internally to be doing the creatives. So that was the other piece that was taking a lot of my time, is not just the interacting on social, but creating the content. I already spend a ton of time creating content on my podcast, so we are just repurposing that. And we have a process because processes are great. So she repurposes quotes and video clips and little like pieces of, bullet point how-tos or whatever lists into pretty little social graphics. And I was doing all that before and spending way too much time on it. Even though it was fun, it's just someone else can do it and I can let go of it being exactly how I would do it.
Well, this was a great intro episode to the other S squared in our space. We don't want you to be a stranger at Accounting High, because I think you can come back on and we can have some deeper conversations about all the other topics that we didn't talk about today. But this was the good origin story. I don't know where we got as far as how close you are to being on the other side of burnout, or how much this was about burnout, but I think this did kind of set the stage to understand the importance of being intentional about your life, whether it's your work-life balance, which I don't like using that phrase, but there's no other real phrase these days, but balancing the intentional stuff that what you're in right now. It seems like you're in this for the long haul, right? The ambitious bookkeeper, of course, bookkeeping and motherhood is the long haul. Mm-hmm. And you're going to have to balance all of it. And you got to find the things that are pulling you down. And you did find it. And if you identified it and pinpointed what it is, then you can tell if it's creeping its way back in too. Because that's all it takes with these addictions is one cigarette or one drink or one app that you loaded back on. Oh, you know what? I could just have TikTok on because I'm not that engaged in it. And then all of a sudden you look at it and you spent an hour and 15 minutes that day just on TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it's and you have introduced TikTok, haven't you?
Not in my business, no.
Okay.
I have a personal, that is where you can watch me struggle through playing music.
I don't think it's struggling. You've got a hook on the episode I've already released at this point. When anybody's listening to this, the Infinite Game book report, check that out because it's a dope hook that I didn't expect. I didn't see that coming. And that's also like kind of like a personal thing too, right? For you to be doing this, you were in the middle of doing some financials the other day, and then you took a break to record a hook for me, and I love it. Now, this is the start of a whole nother endeavor. Like I don't see the music thing, the rap thing as like the thing, but man, that gives me the self actualization and the fulfillment that I wanted. And you know, your earrings look like guitar picks. They look like a little heart guitar
they're little
picks.
Hearts.
They are hearts,
They
but they
totally
look like
could
you could pull it out and then use it as a guitar pick. But you weren't even using a guitar pick on the video. I saw you were playing guitar. You were just using
Yeah,
your
I don't
fingers.
ever actually. I just use my nails.
You just wear them on your ears. Yeah, just take the guitar picks and put
Yeah.
them on your ears. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's dope. Cool. Well, yeah, we're lucky to have you here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It
Thanks
was
for
an
coming
honor.
on. Thank you for telling your story, your origin story. The
Thank you.
superhero, Serena Shoup, the superhero. There's a lot of S's that we can throw in there, so appreciate it. And how can everybody find you? Like, give me the lay of the land there. Like, do you want that? Where do you want them going?
I'm on, like, I have a presence pretty much on all the socials now, so we can link them in the show notes. I don't answer direct messages quickly as I used to, but I do answer them. Instagram is probably one of the best places, and I'm at Ambitious Bookkeeper.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And
Awesome.
I'll link some of your websites too.
Yeah,
Dope.
ambitiousbookkeeper.com. Great one too.
Thanks, Serena.
Thank you.
And hopefully we're gonna play this music and outro us out with this CD that you find later.
All right.
All right, dope. Peace out.
Bye.